Sorry, I'm very pleased to present Valeriy Chaly, who was appointed yesterday as the deputy head of the administration of the President Poroshenko. He's a new chief foreign policy advisor to the president, and we are very happy to have him here in his new role. Хочу передати слово Валерію Олексійовичу Чалому, заступнику голови адміністрації президента, який є основним радником по зовнішній політиці президента. Будь ласка, Валерій.
Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me to this platform, which is not new for me. I believe it's doing very important task of providing information security for Ukraine. And today, in a new quality, yesterday, the President of Ukraine issued the order appointing me the deputy head of administration of the president, and in this quality I will be heading the foreign policy bloc. And yesterday, you know that the new Minister for Foreign Affairs, Mr. Klimkin, was appointed, so the new foreign policy team of the president is being formed, which will be acting in agreed, professional, insistent manner. And also satisfying all the priorities that the country has in long and short term, the challenges facing the country and the president of the country, who's basically leading the country in the foreign policy. I would like to mention some of the key priorities that are the task, and then I believe you will be interested in the peace plan of the president, which is being implemented now. Talking about foreign political priorities, on the one hand, they are sustainable, they correspond to the main strategic parameters and legislation of Ukraine, and that is European integration, that is building up, developing friendly partnership relations along the perimeter of all the borders of Ukraine. This is defining the new model of ensuring security in Ukraine. These are the issues related to looking for the solution for the peaceful plan of the president, and finding the model of solidarity, of joint actions, of the support of his efforts of establishing peace and resolving the problems in the East. Talking about the style and the new format. Now, together with the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the head of the Security Service of Ukraine, Mr. Nalovachenko, Mr. Klimin, I just had the meeting for the representatives of the diplomatic corps accredited in Ukraine. We informed about the current situation in the east of Ukraine. We outlined the main elements of the peace plan of the president. Our expectations from international partners are that they will support the plan. The representatives of the countries of European Union, of the US, Canada, Japan positively appreciated the new format of the communication which is being introduced by the administration of the president, and in general of foreign policy. I believe that the communicative format, understanding of what is happening, is a very important element of achieving the goals that we have. That is why I thank you for that. I believe that's our common joint work, because we will not be able to achieve results without the support of the society, and this support is impossible without understanding the objectives and the mechanisms of achieving the objectives. A few words about current tasks for the nearest future. Now, the President of Ukraine, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the presidential administration are in permanent dialogue at different levels with our international partners. The President of Ukraine recently had 15 telephone discussions with the heads of important influential countries and international organizations. Main efforts are directed towards establishing peace. And today, we also consider that one of the priorities is signing the association agreement with the EU, the economic part of this agreement on the 27th of June in Brussels, and that will be basically mean that the promises of the president given during the election campaign will be fulfilled, and that will be the anchor which will help us become strong at the European in Europe. And the task given to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is attention which should be paid to implementation of the association agreement, but the president is the guarantor of implementing all the positions and strategic objectives of European integration which we have outlined. More than that, we think about introducing the wider format, which would involve into this joint work not just the state and bureaucratic institutions, but also the active part of business, non-governmental sector, our international partners, because we can move towards the stage for the first time of integration with the European Union, and the tasks are absolutely different. I can tell you openly, even this signing of the association agreement was doubtful a month ago. But today, all the partners, have clear understanding of the roadmap that on the 27th in Brussels, the agreement will be signed. This could be maybe on the way to Brussels. We will visit another country, but we will inform you about that. Additionally, that is also part of European direction, which is not just foreign policy, but it also has many elements of internal changes, and is also part of the peace plan of the president. A few words about the peace plan. I believe that you will hear from the president the whole picture, and he basically will tell about parameters of the beginning implementation of the plan and how all the elements are interacting. I would like to stress several things. First, all the elements of peace plan are to develop in parallel. They are to be achieved simultaneously. Second, it is impossible to cease fire without having complete control over the border, without blocking the border in the most dangerous sections of the border. Part of that plan, and that there's no alternative to that requirement, is freeing the hostages. Today there are more than 100 hostages who have to be freed because these are our citizens. These are the representatives of international missions. That is unacceptable situation if the hostages are still kept hostage. We know that today we're talking about finding partners and looking for the dialogue. The President Poroshenko spent several days in direct communication with respectful representatives of those people who are respected in Donbass, the leaders of the business, of NGO society, of the authorities. He met with more than 400 such people. Among them are the heroes of Ukraine, and the problem is that there's no position for negotiations. To negotiate with the terrorists would be wrong today, but to develop the algorithm for negotiations is very important. It is also important to understand how information support of this peace plan will be organized. Very often in these regions, there's propaganda, there's no clear information picture there. There are some measures that would help the situation. The president stated that he's ready to organize early local elections. He's ready for reformatting via constitutional reform. He's ready to form the local representation, the regional administrations. The heads of regional administrations are not to be appointed but elected. It's about renewing the representative format at the central level, and that is why there is this request or there is this need to have the early parliamentary elections, because today's parliament probably does not represent the interests of the citizens from the east of Ukraine, especially from Donetsk and Lugansk Oblast. So it's about decentralization of authorities. It's, well, some of the elements which are in Ukrainian legislation. The protection of language rights are to be developed properly. Also, there should be the right should be maximum delegated to local communities. The president is talking about some changes in tax legislation, about what part of taxes will stay locally, in local budgets. That's not enough. So if you saw these 14 items, I saw that in mass media, I can tell you that's not exactly that plan that we are talking about. There are more items, 15 minimum. The plan is dynamic, it may change, but one of the elements which is so important is social responsibility. Here we are talking not just about creating the workplaces. The president had negotiations with international partners about attracting about $1.5 billion for creating jobs in the east of Ukraine. This will not be done immediately, that's clear, but this could be done in the nearest period of time. That's necessary because one of the reasons of escalating the situation in the region is unemployment. Many people find some money to survive, and that's why they participate in this destabilization. Today we're talking about the border, that we need to have this 100-kilometer buffer zone. Ukraine has made steps to ensure the unilateral demarcation of the border. One of the reasons of destabilization is illegal trafficking of money, drugs, mercenaries, and even equipment across the Ukrainian border. Our ATO units have some success here, and I believe that in the nearest future, everything will be done to close this illegal trafficking. The corridors will be preserved for those who surrender to leave the territory of Ukraine. Those who did not commit any grave crimes could be amnestied, but that requires legislative amendments. But today, anyway, I believe that's the only way to stop escalation. The President Poroshenko was preparing that plan not from the moment when he was inaugurated, but earlier. You know that even before he became the president, he made 15 visits to key countries. He had more than 100 telephone calls in the period of election campaign. Even then, he understood what is to be done from the first day of the presidency, and that is what he uses today to quite quickly move in direction of getting international support. At the same time, Ukraine needs solidarity, and if the peace plan is not implemented, if it's opposed, then the third package of sanctions should be applied. These processes should go in parallel again. In the end, I would like to say that the peace plan, it's not just the task of the president, that's the task for the whole country, that's the task for elites, for all political forces, and today it's very important to achieve that. Otherwise, we will not be able to implement reforms. We will not be able to overcome financial and economic challenges. This is not easy, but that's the only way, the only chance to establish maybe not stability, but opportunity to modernize Ukraine and develop Ukraine. If the plan is implemented, then Ukraine has the chance to move quickly towards the European Union. If there are difficulties, if the plan is torpedoed, then the president of Ukraine and all our law enforcement bodies, all the society is ready to protect and defend the territorial integrity of our state. I'm ready to answer your questions. Radio Svoboda, Bogdana Kostyuk. The question, the peace plan of President Poroshenko is plan A, but there should be plan B in case if the separatists do not surrender, if the militants either do not want or cannot cross the border, because in Russian mass media there's information that the Russian border guards will be shooting at them. So what do we then do with Russian-Ukrainian relations? Thank you. First of all, Ukrainian-Russian relations today are at the lowest phase in the whole period of independence of two countries, Russia and Ukraine. I'm more concerned with the moods in Russia as to more and more recognizing Ukraine as not a friendly country. In Ukraine, we have a different trend. Up to 60% of citizens in Ukraine, according to their assessment, they understand that there's war going on between Russia and Ukraine, but at the same time they say that relations between Russia and Ukraine should be friendly. That means that our neighbors failed to ruin the relations between people, and that's an important element, and we have to make use of it. And our borders, we will never have Canada, Switzerland in the northeast, or Japan. We will always have the neighbor Russia, big neighbor, difficult neighbor, the most difficult direction for foreign policy of Ukraine. Any talks, to my mind, about further steps of restoring the mechanisms of interaction, the interstate commissions, interaction institutional may take place after Russia stops this decision of the Federation about the possibility to send the armed forces of Russia to the territory of Ukraine. I believe this is the step after which we can talk about unblocking some institutional mechanisms. Also, the bilateral agreement framework is very much ruined, and a lot of work is to be done in this direction, but we need to understand how we will be forming our relations. I believe that to restore strategic partnership between Ukraine and Russia will be very difficult, and I will explain why. Strategic partnership means not just active interaction which takes place, economic, energy, there are consultations, negotiations on energy issues, but it means also common goals, the level of interdependence which does not allow to achieve strategic objectives separately. Russia has done so many things which were done by Russia so that this strategic relations go down, because there was the whole cycle of replacing the products in military industrial complex, in energy sector. We did not initiate that. Another problem is with values. So today we can talk more about relations between neighbors, relations between nations, economic relations, and less we can talk about some common values or models of integration. I believe that on the 27th of June, after the economic part of the agreement is signed, we will be in a new situation. There will be no talks about other integration direction. And this will be the final choice of Ukraine. It's difficult to achieve it. After that is done, as soon as Ukraine fixes this European integration direction, then we can talk with Russian Federation differently. But in the end, I would like to say that this period that we are surviving now, that is the period which is not just the challenge for Ukraine, but it's the challenge for Russia as well. Detaining aggression, Ukraine forms a new chance for Russia in the future. I'm not talking about internal intervention or any influence. It's that the Ukrainian model, which will demonstrate its efficiency, will give the chance for Russia to develop as a European-type country, not Eurasian-type country, at least in approaches. Today, I believe, in Ukraine, we are forming the European security model. We are forming the vision of the development in this part of the world for short term, and I believe even for long term. Interfax Ukraine. Please tell about the border. This morning, the Minister of Defense said that the border is closed. And that was confirmed by the Speaker of the Verkhovna Rada. But then the Speaker of the Information Center mentioned that the border is not completely closed. What is really happening in the border? Is it closed or not?
You see the events goes fast, they are very dynamic, and I would like to repeat once again to start to apply the ceasefire as an element of the peace plan. We should gain full control over the border. It doesn't mean that there are no problems at all, but what I know definitely that the events go in line with the plan suggested by the president and then law enforcement agencies, TV channel, and today I've heard that Arseniy Yatsenyuk mentioned that upon signing the association agreement, the export of Ukrainian goods will grow up threefold times. And I believe that the Minister of Economy and the government in general know the situation quite well, since they are professionals. I believe that this will also have not so much influence, not only in the economy and not in the economy per se, but it will influence development of Ukraine in general. I believe the access to the public finance for the business, public procurement procedures, judiciary system, technical standards, eradication of corruption. I believe that these are the most important aspects for implementation on the association agreement framework. Of course, today we are in the regime in respect of the European Union integration. We have the special regime, special quotas by December. These are duty-free regime. I believe that the Minister of Economy is absolutely right from his point of view in his area, but for me, the most important are the elements which ensure stability of the country. I mean here the security elements and defense elements and
for such a great and informative briefing. Just wanted to quickly revisit the gas issue. I was just wondering where you are with those talks, what the prospects are. Are you worried that Russia has cut off the gas, and what are you going to do to get through this situation? And then just secondly, you'd said that if one side reneges on the peace agreement, you will not hesitate to defend your territory, but we know that you don't trust the other side. Who's actually going to guarantee the implementation of this peace agreement? Who's on your side? Who are the enforcers? And what can realistically be done if Russia backs out or fails to deliver?
Let me begin with your second question. You know, if we ask about
when we are
this peaceful solution of this conflict, but we are waiting for the observation. We are maintaining some mission. You know, this in triangle format, Mr. Chaly to participate, and OSCE also as a supervisor of that, what's happened there. And we, you know, not have any guarantee. Guarantee is willing by the president. It's willing by the people that live in these territories of Ukraine, regions of Ukraine. It's willing for peace and that solution. In the same time, we have multilateral formats of the talks and negotiation every time. And it's something new. It's like a mechanism of the crossroads responsibilities from the different sides. And but you know, we have the decision of the international organization, including UN, OSCE, European Union, the Council of Europe. We have the public position and opposition that's declared by the main international partners of Ukraine. So it's from one hand, it's a very complicated mechanism, but in the other hand, the only guarantee for that, it goes step by step on this track that's proposed by the President of Ukraine, and international solidarity and support of that, and goodwill of our Russian partners, because including the President of Russia, because we know that without the supplies from Russian territory, there's drugs and weapons and other things, it would be easy to achieve the results. And finally, it's a guarantee, it's the people of Ukraine. People of Ukraine that's living not only in the central part of Ukraine, but in the eastern part of Ukraine. On gas, you know, that's the position of Ukraine very clear, and we can't go through the same way that we have had for many years, and not lead us to the stability in this sector. And Ukraine remained a very important suppliers of gas to Europe. So Ukrainian territories, transportation as gas remain very amount that's important for EU. And we are ready, I mean the Ukrainian government ready to pay a price, but market price. That's why I think this issue should be pushed out from political process to economic process. And I think Prime Minister Arseniy Yatsenyuk in a parliament speak about that, very clear to give our priority, no changes in it.
Ангеліна Карякіна, Євроньюз. У мене два питання.
I have two questions. Would you please mention whether you will continue the sessions of the contact group, which comprises OSCE, Russia, and Ukraine, whether you have informed Ambassador Mr. Zarabov about the provisions of the presidential peace plan, and whether the second question, whether Ukraine is ready to announce the ceasefire about which he mentioned even this week, and what were the results of talk between Mr. Putin and Mr. Poroshenko. There are three questions in one, and I will start with the third one first. So what is the subject of talks between the presidents of Ukraine and Russia? These are issues which contribute to the peaceful solution of the problem. This is not an easy dialogue, but it is inevitable, it is necessary today, and when we have to pass this way to find peaceful solution based on the presidential peace plan. As for the plan and information of to Mr. Zarabov, the peace plan by the president was developed jointly by many stakeholders involving the Russian party, the European Commission, but obviously this is Ukrainian plan. The key stakeholders were informed on the plot of this plan. All European Union countries are informed, the United States are informed, Japanese is informed about the specific content of this plan. I believe that in the nearest future you will hear directly from the president about specific issues and time frames from the president himself. I believe that it will be better for you to hear from the president himself about the plan. I believe this is a matter of several hours now. Everything takes time, and in case the plan will be hindered or there will be attempts to undermine the implementation of the plan, the implementation, of course, will slow down, but all the key partners know the time frames and they are ready to follow them.
Will the official announcement be by the president of the peace plan? When can we expect that to be? And the second question, the representatives of the Donetsk People's Republic have already, so far as I know, refused the peace plan outright. So I know this question has already been asked, but I didn't think there was a clear answer. What is the plan B if the plan fails, if the fighting continues?
First of all, let me not speak about plan B. Now we try to maintain a peace, and even plan B is plan B about peace, not about war, but the different measures. If you are asking me how we react for that declaration that's not ready to take its plan, you know, it's not only representatives. Moreover, I think some terrorists or even representatives of so-called republics. Please answer me, where this republic? I can find in Constitution of Ukraine, can find in laws this republic, not recognized by our partners, even Russia not recognized that. So it's most problem not that. Most problem how to achieve the disarmament, how to achieve anti-criminal measures, how to achieve the peace for the people who live in Donetsk and Lugansk. It's not, I think it's not the main problem. If some not recognized yet, I think it takes time. If you ask me when, you not ask me where. I suppose the question where also very interesting, and you will see the very next hours where it will be launched. But when, it's also be a part of the presidential position that you will have from president directly. just once again, you will, its time goes for hours, not days, not weeks.
Международный отдел «Ради сотен Майдан».
International Department of the Council of Hundreds of Maidan. We know that the Scientific Council of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where you've been working since 2002 after Yanukovych ran away, gave a conclusion that there is a threat that Crimea would be occupied, and that was scientifically supported opinion. Why this opinion was ignored? Who is to be blamed that that opinion was ignored? It's difficult for me to answer your question because I have not seen that. I worked in 2009, 2010 in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I worked actively with the Public Council in the ministry that included former heads of the secretaries of the National Security and Defense Council, the ministers of defense. At that period, maybe I did not see that, but at that period of time, both the international experts and Ukrainian experts probably have never thought about such development of events in Crimea. I saw some materials on possible models, scenarios of development, but again, I believe that you will hardly find the next experts who were able to forecast not just that scenario, but reality of such a scenario, because that scenario was published in books. There are some books which were published, which were writing about Crimea, but that it is a serious scenario which could be implemented. Well, one of the reasons, main reason, was probably that we over-assessed our friendly relations with Russian Federation. We really wanted to have such algorithm of relations, partnership relations, which would make impossible any other scenario. Even after the war with Georgia, it was difficult to imagine that some annexation is possible in Ukraine. I can agree with you that many things were not taken into account for real policy. And maybe that's the lesson that we need to learn for the future. We need to look at all the scenarios. We need to look at them in dynamic. We need to analyze them very seriously without throwing away the models which seem to be hypothetical, which actually all our system of threats that we have in documents, in our main documents, stated that there's no direct military threat for Ukraine. The military doctrine did not take that into account. That turns our understanding about main challenges and threats for Ukraine from foot to head, so to say. So we need to look differently at the forming of the national strategy for security of Ukraine, and we need to take into account what you're talking about. First of all, on behalf of the Center, I would like to congratulate you. You're not just the founder of Ukrainian Crisis Media Center. You're the person who brings some modern vision of how our foreign policy should develop. Ukrainian Crisis Media Center has become the instrument of people's diplomacy. But what is your vision of reforming the diplomatic service of Ukraine? And also about economic diplomacy, that's very important, especially in the context of diversifying export from Ukraine abroad. First of all, answering your second question on economic component, we still have this priority. There have been some decisions made which did not institutionally help efficiency, but our primary task today is probably not export opportunities, but attracting investments, creating conditions where we would have a financial and economic support. Talking about export, it's obvious that the integration economic parameters open up new opportunities, but now our goods are competing in price. This is a difficult period, but it allows us to think about the structure of Ukrainian export again. Also, another challenge is that many goods are blocked to be exported to Russia, for example. That's why we need to find new markets. Whether these are diplomats or foreign representatives who should be very active. I believe that's not the main task of diplomats. But assisting that, looking for correct models is an important element. As to diplomatic service in general, yesterday the President emphasized that the main principles are professionalism, integrity, patriotism, and now, in this situation, loyalty. Basically, people need to work putting all their efforts into work. But today the material and technical support is still at a very low level, and there are many outstanding issues here. As to reform of diplomatic service, I believe you will see in the nearest future the tasks that the President put to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, to Mr. Klimkin. You will see that in the nearest future. I don't think this should be revolutionary measures, but to involve to the maximum the potential of diplomats, to establish the communication between the diplomatic missions and the central apparatus. The actions of the diplomats are to be more active in proposing new decisions, new ideas. That is what we need to do. But unless we have a serious foundation and a power in the state, no one of the diplomats will be able to compensate that, because that's a mutual mechanism, strengthening the state by reforms that supports our foreign policy, and the activity of diplomats may help the development of Ukraine. The priorities are the same. The mechanisms could be somewhat changed. One of the priorities is protection, defense of Ukrainians, wherever they are. Also, I would like to talk about the support of Ukrainians from abroad, which they continue to render, and even we in the administration of the President, we communicate with the initiatives, with the projects that support our information line. I started that once, now you continue that active information activity. You show the truth about what's happening in Ukraine, in the east of Ukraine, for the international community and Ukrainian media. And I would like to thank the journalists that the most current information and the true information is one of the key elements of the peace plan of the President. Thank you.